Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today, we are going to share Paranormal Games horror stories. First story. My sister lost her first paranormal game. I want to start this off by saying that, yes, I know what I did was stupid. I'm not naive, and I knew what the consequences of any mistakes I made would be. For several years, I've been playing these paranormal games and rituals, hoping to document some of the stranger occurrences I've experienced or debunk silly online claims. And I thoroughly research each ritual before I try it. This particular one was no different. And yes, as I sit here, terrified, typing on my dimly lit, half-dead phone, I am well aware I have paid the price. Any warnings or reprimanding don't matter at this point, and I will likely be long forgotten with my words disappearing under the earth, never seeing the light of day. That being said, if this is ever uncovered, consider this my final testament. One of my favorite ways to spend my free time was to post my various paranormal encounters on the Paranormal subreddit. When I was very little, my family and I used to live in a really old house on the West Coast. Disturbing things kept happening in that house, though. They weren't much, and it really only affected my sister the most. But my parents were looking to buy a nicer house anyway. My mother's youngest brother was a pastor at the local church, and he was always skeptical of my sister's paranormal claims. But he told my parents that moving to a new house would likely give us some peace of mind, and he'd bless the new house for us. After my mother got a promotion in her job and my father had saved up plenty of money, we moved into a slightly nicer neighborhood closer to the beach, and our paranormal experiences stopped. However, in high school my friends and I were all going through our paranormal and occult phases, so they loved it when I would tell stories from our old house, and we would play with Ouija boards all the time, at least trying to be careful and respectful. But the summer before this school year, we started researching different rituals and games floating around the internet. We all post a lot on paranormal subreddits, and we're involved in a few paranormal Discord servers, so we have a lot of online friends we talk to as well. Most of the time, our games and rituals were just for fun and nothing ever really happened. But there were a few times when we would see something strange. Anyway, I thought that Christmas break would be a good time to start doing a few more rituals and posting my findings. So I copied down a ton of ones that seemed to have actual accounts of legitimacy attached to them. I ended up playing a few of these games with little to no success, but I eventually came across a website unlisted on Google by clicking various links on other sites. It seemed a little sketchy with a black background and only plain white text covering the page, but it appeared to be some kind of message board containing the main post which described the game and various comments underneath it. This particular game was simply called Finders Keepers and required the player to create a sort of contract with a spirit, fall asleep, and find the contract that had moved to somewhere else in his or her house in under 7 minutes and 6 seconds, an odd time requirement, but okay. All of the comments were extremely short and vague, with some posting things like okay or works, but peculiarly, I could count at least 10 comments simply saying weeper. There was no box where I could type my own comment, so I figured it was likely an archived site, but I shrugged it off and copied down all of the rules onto my phone since it seemed interesting. The first rule of Finders Keepers was that there wasn't a specific time it had to be played at, which is something that made me skeptical of other paranormal games. But it was to begin sometime between 3 hours after sunset and 3 hours before sunrise. I made up my mind and texted my friends what I was doing, and they had no qualms with me doing it by myself since it was a single-player game and I knew what I was doing. So a few days after Christmas, when all of my relatives had left our house and things were starting to settle down, I waited until around midnight when I was sure my parents were finally asleep before grabbing my supplies, a needle or sharp object, a pin, a candle, a lighter, a blank piece of paper, scissors, and any object that when burned could produce bits of ash. I chose a thin wooden rod from one of my childhood toys, and heading down to the basement where I figured my parents would no longer hear me. Then, the website said I had to start the game in some sort of closed space, like a closet, so I entered a tiny closet space underneath the basement stairs. I proceeded to light the candle with my cigarette lighter like the directions described, and the crawl space was so small that the candle practically lit up the whole room, enveloped in the sweet smell of vanilla. Now that I was ready, the ritual could begin. Carefully, I unlocked my phone and read the directions once more. First, I had to use my own blood, kind of gross and very cliché for every paranormal game, with the needle and pen to write my full name on the piece of paper. Apparently, this would bind me to the paper, or something along the lines of that. Then, I needed to burn my stick or other object to create a little bit of ash and write the name of the entity I would need to summon in order to play this game. The website I looked at said it was fine to simply write hider. After this came the weird part. In order to make the contract unique to both the player and hider, the player was to use the scissors to cut the piece of paper into a unique shape or design. If it matched any other shape made by a player from the past, the player would automatically lose, though the site, like most articles on paranormal games, failed to mention what losing would entail. I had a pretty good idea of what modifications I was going to make to the paper, so this part didn't worry me. Once the player had completed contract, he or she would singe part of the paper on the candle to summon the entity and officially initiate the start of the game. After this, the player would preset the timer, usually on a phone, to 0:7:06 and wait, staring at the candle, and after a few minutes, the entity would come and put the player to sleep. I was the most skeptical about this part, especially since I found it hard to fall asleep, but I decided to try it out anyway. This entity was supposed to show the player a dream of its spectral body hiding the paper somewhere around the player's house. Then when the player woke up, the contract would be gone and he or she would start the timer and have 7 minutes and 6 seconds to run to where the entity had placed the paper. Upon obtaining the paper, the player would stop the timer, yell, "I win," and run back to the candle to burn the candle, thus banishing the entity and ending the game. It all seemed fairly simple, and I was both excited and nervous to see if the ritual would work. Before I began, the website recommended the player take good note of the time and date when he or she began, so I unlocked my phone to see that it was 12:14 a.m. on December 31st. Then, I took the needle to scrape off a scab I had on my knee and watched the blood bead up on my leg. Quickly, I took the pen and dipped in the little beads of red liquid and used it to write Catherine along with my middle and last name, re-dipping the pen for more after each letter. When I finished, I wiped away the blood from the scab I had opened up and focused on the candle. I then took my wooden rod and dipped in the flames, charring the sides. The charred parts broke off when I pressed the rod onto the paper and acted like chalk, allowing me to scrawl hider under my name. So far, everything was going well, and I used my scissors to get to town on the paper, cutting and slicing and ripping it in unorganized and asymmetrical patterns. Then, after rereading the directions and making sure I was ready, I lightly brushed my disfigured contract against the flames, muttering, "Oh God, oh God." Nothing happened. Almost ready to give up and text my friends that the ritual was bullshit. I stared at the candle intensely, willing something to happen. For what felt like an eternity, I sat there in silence, listening to the sound of my heart rate echoing in my ears. Finally, to both my delight and horror, I heard a soft whoosh as a small draft-like gust of air entered the room, causing my candle to flicker ever so slightly. I'm not really sure when I passed out, but I do remember the feeling of my shoulder blades hitting the tough carpet as I fell backward. My head felt foggy, and all of my movements seemed fluid and light. Though I could tell this was likely a dream, I was far from lucid and had little understanding of what was going on. What I saw next shook me to my core. When my vision cleared, I realized I was still lying on my back, staring up into the darkness. But the only thing I could see was the entity up close and personal, staring at me with all his dreadfulness. It's hard to describe this horrifying creature accurately, but it closely resembled the large head of a fat, white, hyper-realistically hand-drawn cat with ugly glowing eyes and a rotted yellow Cheshire grin. My mouth opened, but my yelps were caught deep within my throat. As this cat stared at me, my mind began to race. I didn't want to complete the ritual. I wanted to run, get out of the house, and hide at my friend Samantha's with the others. But it was as if the cat sensed my wishes. He began to sputter a deep, guttural chuckle, and I could feel his breath on the tips of my ears. "Stay calm," I ordered myself. The cat began to slowly fade away into the darkness, and I began to grow concerned. He never showed me where he put the paper. Oh God! A sinking feeling weighed down on my otherwise weightless stomach. Wait! I was eventually able to cry out, my voice echoing throughout whatever ethereal plane in which I seemed to be. But as my shout faded, so too did the grinning face of the cat. There wasn't any dramatic waking moment, but I did sit up and give out a small gasp as I was able to breathe slightly easier with the cat beast quite literally off of my chest. My movements still felt floaty, and I was definitely still lightheaded, but I sat up, knowing I'd have to act quickly. I snatched up the candle and shined its light on every corner of the dark closet. Sure enough, the contract I had signed was nowhere to be found. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the timer on my phone had already started. Right, the 7 minutes. I need to go. Panic began to set in as I realized I never received the vision of where exactly my paper was. I glanced down at my phone to see that the seconds were ticking away faster than any timer I had ever seen. What the hell is happening? My hands began to tremble as I began to sputter, "Oh God, oh shit," and run frantically around my basement. I tried to remember what would happen if one failed to find the contract. Maybe the hider would claim you or something, or haunt you forever. Will I disappear into the depths of hell or something? I really didn't want to find out. Oh God. Shit. S.H.I.T. Where is that paper? I looked under each of the couches, behind my cat's food bowl, and in each of the cabinets of the bar. When none of them contained my paper, I threw open the doors to the bathroom and the guest bedroom. Still nothing. Running in this state of mind was like running on slippery ice in space. My legs flailed frantically behind me, and my heart pounded harder with each awkward step I took. The timer only had a little over a minute left on it. How is that even possible? I quickly ran upstairs and frantically peered around the kitchen with wide, wild eyes. 30 seconds left. Now 27. Oh shit. Here goes nothing. I bolted over to the edge of the kitchen and tugged on the small bathroom door. It opened as the timer struck 3 seconds. A jolt of fright surged through my body as I found myself face to face with the white cat. Shit! I screamed, clamping a hand over my quivering lips. His grin widened, revealing rows of nasty, decrepit teeth. I couldn't see the rest of his body, but his head was more than twice the size of mine. Tears stung at my eyes, but all I needed to do was burn that paper and get this over with. The timer on my phone instantly went off, sounding a corrupted buzzing, like an old PC shutting down, filled the bathroom. "Hello, Catherine," the cat addressed me. My whole body began to shake. His voice was echoey, much like mine, and was strong and deep yet gentle, like an older stern man reading nursery rhymes. "There," On the floor beneath this cat entity was my contract, cut up in the same ways I had cut and written in my handwriting. This isn't real. Steady. Steady. You probably fell asleep before playing. Wake up, it's okay. There was no way what I was seeing was real. Sure, I had plenty of experience under my belt, but this activity was out of any realm of possibility. As soon as I woke up, if this was a dream, I was done with paranormal games. I slowly bent down to pick up my paper as the cat watched me the entire time, smiling and beaming with horrific pride. As soon as the paper clung to my fingertips, I bolted upright. I win. I screamed into the entity's face, and like a child afraid of the dark, I wheeled around to sprint away from this creature. If only my feet could move. Not so fast, my dear, the entity cooed. He spun me back around to face him, my face clenching up in fear. I'm afraid you lost quite a while ago. And that was when I had my dramatic awakening moment. Screaming, I tried to sit up as my physical, very real eyes opened into complete and utter darkness, but my head slammed against the hard, almost stone-like top to wherever I was. Silk padding encased my body, and a musty smell filled my nose. Oh shit, this is bad. I pressed my hands on each padded side to feel my way around. The top of whatever container I was in had a small crack, though I couldn't feel where it led to. This must be where air is coming from. But the more I thought about it, the thinner the air seemed and the tighter my chest grew. As I felt around some more, my left hand gripped a small glass rectangle. My phone. I pressed each button on the side until the screen lit up, flooding the small area with light. Unfortunately, I had to wait for the phone to power on, so I took advantage of the white light to get a look at my surroundings. Each wall except for the one I was facing, which I assumed was the top, was covered in white padding. I glanced down at my body and noticed I was lying flat on my back, dressed in clothes I don't remember putting on. Suddenly, I began to realize where I was. Someone please help. I began banging on the lid. Oh God, please help. A panic attack slowly started coming over me, and I barely realized I was sobbing uncontrollably. My piercing screams almost deafened me, and my head grew lighter and fuzzier as I continued to pound my fists against the ceramic lid. I could barely see from the oceans of tears pouring out of my eyes, but I swiped up on my phone to make an emergency call. The phone's battery was at 13%, and I noticed I had absolutely no cell service whatsoever. But I punched in 911 anyway. Instantly, I was greeted with the standard, "Your call cannot be completed," message, and I began to wail harder. I tried my parents and my sister, unsure of what I was expecting, and nothing worked. I'm fucking trapped, I sobbed to myself. I lay there for a while, crying and hitting the lid with my head until I felt dizzy. This is it, I whispered. This is fucking it. I closed the phone back to its lock screen. A ripple of terror washed over me as I read the date as January 3rd. Oh, what the hell? Unsure of what else to do, I opened my notes app and began typing down with trembling hands everything I could remember, beginning with rudimentary notes of what happened. I was eventually able to write a little more, and I plan on writing this for as long as I have left. No one will ever see this, but if anyone decides to check up on me, please warn Samantha never to try this. Oh God, please. I never thought anything like this could even remotely happen. Shit. I can't feel my feet anymore, and my chest is getting really tight. 1% left. I don't know what to do. Please, please, I don't know what to do. Edit. I really have no idea how to begin this post. Finding this on Catherine's phone absolutely devastated my family, but I really needed to share this with someone. And I thought this place might be where it can finally be put to rest. Let me explain. We found my sister's body around 5 a.m. when my mom went downstairs to feed our cat. She was completely unconscious and stone cold, and when I finally woke up to about 30 missed calls from my parents, she was pronounced dead in the emergency room. The next few days were hell for us. None of us slept, and Catherine's friends kept pounding us with questions about her whereabouts that night and the location of her phone, which was nowhere to be found. But that was the least of our worries. Obviously, the strange circumstances of her death warranted an autopsy, but we live in a fairly large county, so it took several days before the coroner could look at her, so she remained in his office that whole time. However, when he took her out to begin the autopsy, her head was bruised and her fingers were bloodied. I didn't let my parents see the full note on her phone, so I'm not sure if they know in excruciating detail what I know. The coroner's autopsy showed that Catherine died from a combination of lack of airflow and something along the lines of a panic attack while she was inside the fucking container. I really don't know what to do, and my parents have just shut down. After the coroner found the missing phone, which is really weird because no one has any idea how it got in with her, he gave it to us, and I charged it up to look through her texts and photos, finding this message. My parents have now completely shut down. My mom has started drinking, and I start therapy on Thursday, though I've found that smoking a lot of weed kind of helps. Right now, I'm absolutely terrified. What if that thing is still in our house? And how the hell did it do this to Catherine? I also have no idea how long she had to type out her note, especially since it was quite long, but I really don't want to think about what was going on in those hours. I did edit her note a little bit for clarity and added some of the introduction about our old house for some background. I try to keep it in the same voice, though, but it was really hard reading what she went through, especially towards the end. She's still logged on here on her computer. Second story. My life is in ruins after a paranormal experience at a roadside motel. Right off the bat, I want to get this out there. I do not believe in ghosts, or did not, that was, until my experience last week. Now I'm not too sure. What changed my mind? My night at a creepy roadside motel. I guess by definition, all roadside motels can be described as creepy. Nearby highways, dimly lit parking lots, shady characters hanging out of doorways smoking. And the one me and my girlfriend stayed in last week, where I had this paranormal experience, was no different. A place well and truly stuck in the 50s called The Lodge. We found it just off the I-95 in the middle of Maine. We were on our way to Canada to attend a wedding in the province of New Brunswick, and were driving because 2 weeks earlier my girlfriend had had the great idea of taking the scenic route, basically because she hates flying. Why not? I had thought at the time, what else could be more enjoyable than a nice summer drive up through Maine? It turned out that a lot of things could have been more enjoyable, for this scenic route came with a lot of rain and not much else. A storm coming off the Atlantic pounded us the moment we left Boston. The music in our car accompanied nonstop by the swishing of windscreen wipers. We had been due to stop at the night in Portland on the coast with a friend, but that morning he had called to say his mother in New York was sick and he would be spending the weekend with her. Never mind. Why don't we stop somewhere else for the night? And that is where the roadside motel comes in. It was just before sunset that we pulled into its parking lot. Over the noise of the storm, I asked, "Is the place abandoned?" Which was not an unreasonable question since half the doors and windows in the U-shaped courtyard were boarded up. My girlfriend simply pointed to a small office, where a neon light flickered that read The Lodge. Just below the sign, through a dirty window, sat an old lady behind a desk, watching us. I got out into the rain. Flashes of lightning zigzagged across the black sky as I jogged between the little rivers forming on the broken tarmac. Between the rolling thunder, you could hear the drones of the passing vehicles on the nearby I-95. Upon my entrance into the office, a room which smelled of a mix of cigarettes and mothballs. The old woman merely stared at me, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "Are you open?" I asked, water dripping from my coat onto the stained carpet. The old woman did not say anything, only continued to watch me with her hollow eyes. Then, like she had been considering my request, began to nod slowly. "Okay, how much is a room?" She rose from the chair, placed on the counter a set of keys, which had the number 66 attached as a tag. "Okay, yes. At this point you turn around, get back in the car, and hit the highway." It was that part in the horror movie where the lead role finds a staircase descending into darkness, and yourself, from the safety of the audience, are screaming, "Don't go down there, stupid." But what do they always do? They always go down. I suppose it wouldn't be such a great story if the character slams the door shut and leaves the killer waiting in the dark, twiddling his thumbs, would it? But I digress. At the old woman sliding the keys forward, I got out $20 and waved it in the air like a white flag. $20 for the night? The old woman nodded and pointed at the keys. I glanced out of the window towards the car. Lightning momentarily illuminated my girlfriend in the steam-up car, nervously watching me. "Should we stay here?" I turned back round to the woman and grabbed the keys. "Thanks," I muttered, and headed back out into the rain. Upon entering the car, I dangled the keys in front of my girlfriend. "Friendly woman," I said cheerily, though she said business was quiet tonight. "Yeah, just a bit," my girlfriend replied, looking round the dark courtyard. "It's kind of creepy here. Why don't we head straight on to Canada tonight?" "Nah, should be fine." I shifted the car in gear and trundled it over to near room 66. "One night won't hurt us." Famous last words. Surprisingly, room 66 was fairly modern. Whitewashed walls, a widescreen TV, refrigerator, clean en suite bathroom, potted flowers, mirrors. It almost eased our nerves of being the only guests in this rundown motel during the middle of a storm. Of course, there was a door. A locked door, that is, at the back of the room, which at the time we assumed was a small cleaning closest. I tried the handle and afterwards forgot all about it as we each took showers, then settled into bed. My girlfriend, who would have been able to take a siesta on the edge of a cliff during a hurricane, fell swiftly to sleep. But for me, it took much longer, tossing and turning until I finally drifted off. I woke around 2 a.m., and that is when the funny business started. It began with a noise on the roof. Now it wasn't the pit-patter of rain upon the flat roof. No, it sounded like footsteps, as if someone was pacing up and down. Okay, I thought, it's a bird. There is a bird on my roof. It's just a bird. Yet the more I told myself that, the more frantic the steps became, until suddenly they stopped. I lay underneath the sheets, listening. The rain had ceased, and the storm moved on, but still the howling wind whipped around the courtyard outside. Relax, I told myself, and got up to go to the toilet, using the dim lights in the parking to guide my way to the en suite bathroom. Now, it was as I was in the middle of my business that the door to the bathroom, which I had purposely opened to full extent, began slowly creaking closed by itself. My initial reaction upon seeing it in my peripheral vision was that the ground must be uneven. But then my brain began working on overtime to determine if the door had done that earlier. No, it hadn't. We were on perfectly flat ground. So now I'm doing my business in a race against time against this slowly creaking door. And the bathroom, having no natural light, is in near total darkness. And that is when my heart starts beating fast because I have a very strange feeling that there is someone stood in the bathtub, no other than a little girl, watching me. The moment that door closes, I know that I am toast. and I would have my throat ripped out by whoever, or whatever, is standing there. In the last moment, I lurched for the door and jammed my fingers between the gap, flicking on the light switch. There was no one in the bathtub. It was just my imagination. I stood there, panting, my body covered in a thin layer of sweat. I put the door back into its position, fully open, and waited for it to move again, disproving my theory of the perfectly even ground. It did not move a millimeter. I moved it into another position. Maybe it was the angle you had to get right for it to move. No, it remained in place. Okay, that's creepy. I turned the lights off and returned to bed, where I lay motionless, staring up at the ceiling while my heart pounded in my ears. That is when I saw a silhouette move past the window outside. It was a faint silhouette, but all the same, something did walk past. I sat up, watching the curtains and the dim lights in the parking lot. It could have been the old lady from the office, maybe checking on something. The old lady who never said anything and accepted my $20. Hey, I said, shaking my girlfriend awake. No time to act brave now. No, sir. Request dismissed, sir. Hey, Emily, I continued, shaking her harder. Wake up, goddammit. But she just lay asleep, or unconscious. I felt a plunge of fear, and that's when the parking lot light went out, casting the room into total darkness. Wake up, Emily. I wanted to scream, but no words came out, and then I heard a key being placed into the lock of that door on the other side of the room, the one that we had assumed was the cleaning closet, and the key slowly began to turn, until the lock clicked, and even though I could not see it due to the darkness, I felt a draft of cold air and knew it had drifted open. Oh, I'm thinking, sitting there next to my unconscious girlfriend, shivering with fear. What do you want? I called out feebly. I was answered by the flick of a light switch, revealing that what lay behind that door. It was a corridor. There couldn't be a corridor, though. The motel was a small U-shaped courtyard of single units. There was surely not enough space. Yet, right before my eyes was a secret passage. I got out of bed. Yes, that's right. In my PJs, I got up and started inching towards the corridor. Why? I don't know why. Something was drawing me in. It was like my body had a mind of its own and was taking me towards the corridor. No, I croaked, trying to convince my body to stop. I could only control the neck muscles, however, so I turned to look at my girlfriend in the bed, to try and plead with her to wake up and save me from the imminent disaster that I was soon to befall. But as I turned my neck, I quickly found that she was awake, watching me with hollow and lifeless eyes like that of the old lady at the desk. Emily. I stuttered. She rose her finger to lips, shushing me. Then she grinned and blood spilled out of her mouth and ran down her chin. WWWHATTEF. I never got to finish the sentence because the force that was pulling my body had brought me into the middle of this secret corridor. On either side it ran off into darkness. There were other doors that lined the passage, doors which all had the number 666. Then, out of the darkness, one end of the corridor began to glow red. It grew brighter, and strangely, I could feel a throbbing, like somewhere down there was a beating heart. I turned my head away, and as I did, I glanced back into my room, where I saw that my girlfriend was now standing beside the TV, her body slumped, her face hidden by her hair, as if she was possessed. Emily. I tried to scream, but yet again, no words came out. The corridor glowed so brightly now, I could feel the heat on my skin. The next part was the worst. From behind the doors that lined the corridors came the sound of voices. People I knew. A friend who had passed away long ago started calling my name. beating against the door with his fist. He calling to me to let him out, telling me it was my fault he died. How long I stayed in that corridor for I don't know. It might have been a minute, maybe a day. Who knows, maybe I am still trapped there, perhaps in one of those rooms, waiting like my friend for the next victim to be ensnared in the trap. Somehow, however, I don't know how, I found myself back in the car, driving down I-95. I was shaking violently, and my girlfriend lay in the passenger seat unconscious. I pulled right off the highway and made it to the nearest town, where I collapsed at the front door of the nearest house, babbling incoherently about demons and witches and corridors and motels. It's been a week now and my girlfriend is still not awake. That night she was airlifted to Maine Medical Center where it was diagnosed that she was in a coma. I gave my statement to the police about what happened at the motel. They don't believe me. Of course they don't. Would you? An officer told me that the lodge closed in the 60s after a father murdered his whole family there one night. But that's my story. Emily's family are here in the hospital and are refusing to speak to me. They think I tried to murder her. I rang my folks and they flew out a few days ago and are with me now. My dad's been sorting out a lawyer because he heard whispers of myself being charged if Emily fails to wake up. I'm sharing this account because I don't know who else to turn to. Maybe I'm mad, but I experienced something dark and disturbing last week in that motel. Third story, a deadly game of red light, green light. All of you are familiar with the red light, green light game. You have one person turned away from the rest of the group, and the person yells green light to start. When the person yells red light, everyone has to stop, and if someone is caught still moving, they are out of the game. What if there was a version of the game where the prize was your life? As I sit here in front of my computer writing down what happened to my friend Tony, I am left wondering who is responsible for this heinous act. I just received an unmarked email from Tony who gave me an audio file to record in writing and post for the world to see. I will update everyone about the situation as I get more information as it becomes available. This is what I have gotten from Tony so far. Day 1. I woke up with 5 other people on one side of a big room. On the wall opposite from where we lay was a long hallway that led to a door that had an exit sign above it. There was also a strobing light that blinked red then turned off. For an undetermined amount of time, there was no light visible, then the red light came back on. Inside the room we were in were 5 beds, couches, T.V's pool table, and a large kitchen fully stocked with food. Everything a human could ever need to survive. I looked around at the others. They too seemed to be as perplexed as I was. Suddenly, the big screen in the middle of the front wall turned on and a face covered in shadow appeared. In a distorted voice, the figure spoke. Dark figure. Welcome Derek, Tony, Caroline, Ricky, and Andy to your new home. You are wondering what is going on and why you are here. To start, this is all about a simple game. There is a strobing red light that is down a long, narrow hallway. At the end of this hallway is the exit to your nightmare. I bet you're thinking this is easy. I'll be out of here in no time. Well, you'd be wrong. This is the grown-up version of red light, green light. Once you pass the yellow mark on the ground right at the hallway entrance, you have half an hour to get across the hallway and the door at the end unlocks. If you are moving when the red light comes on, or you aren't at the door by the time the timer runs out, the door will lock and you just lost your first chance. In all, you get 3 chances. If by the 3rd try you fail, a door will open and a gun will be pointed at you, and you will be killed. You have as long as you like to get out of here. There is enough food stored in the kitchen to feed 5 people comfortably for 2 weeks. Longer, the more people die while trying to get out. Welcome to your new life, and have fun. The video ended with him laughing in a distorted voice. Then the screen went black once again. Everyone stood in silence as we all took in the situation. I decided to break the silence. Tony, why don't we start off with introducing ourselves? My name is Tony. I am a teacher, single, and my hobby is woodworking. I was 5'8" with short brown hair and brown eyes. I wore a Pink Floyd t-shirt and blue stretchy jeans. Caroline. My name is Caroline and I am a lawyer. I am also single and my hobby is knitting. Caroline was just a little shorter than I was. She had brownish blonde hair and blue eyes. She wore a business suit with a skirt. Andy. My name is Andy and I work in a warehouse. I am single and my hobby is watching hockey. Andy was about 6 feet tall with longer brown hair and brown eyes. He wore a dirt shirt and stained blue jeans. Derek. My name is Derek and I am a journalist. I am also single and my hobby is drinking. Derek was 5'5". He had short black hair and green eyes. He wore sweatpants and a baggy black shirt. Ricky. Well, I guess it's my turn. As you probably have guessed, my name is Ricky and I am a social worker. I am single and my hobby is dancing. Ricky was 5'3" and had long blonde hair. She was more on the heavy-set side. She had blue eyes and wore a summery dress. A clock hung above the TV which read 2:30 in the afternoon. I walked over to the hallway and stood right before the yellow line and surveyed it. It was about 20 feet long, and there was no place to hide. The red light came on, at which point I looked down at my watch. After 10 seconds it turned off. Stayed off for 15 seconds, and the red light came back on. 8 seconds later the light went off. Then the red light came back on after 2 seconds. After studying the timing a bit more, I realized that there was no rhythm to the light. I sighed and was pushed out of the way. Andy. Andy, this is going to be easy, just watch the pro do it. He stepped across the yellow tape, and a digital clock started on the door. 30:00, 29.59. It was counting down. When the red light turned off, Andy started to walk. After 3 steps he stopped, but the light stayed off for 10 more seconds. He cursed when the red light came on and waited for it to go off. When it went off, he took 5 steps and stopped. Not a second later, the red light came on. Tony. Oh, that was a close one, Andy. I called to him. When the red light went off again, he sprinted down the rest of the hallway. When he was just out of hand's reach of the doorknob, the red light came on, and an audible click could be heard. The clock on the door disappeared, and Andy banged on the door. Andy, let us out, you lunatic. I have places to go, people to see. He continued to bang on the door. Then a new voice cut through the room. If you don't step away from the door and get back beyond the tape, there will be consequences. Andy, oh, what, are you going to kill me? I bet your threats are moot. I don't see a door that for a gun to go, though. Andy continued to bang on the door. He slammed his shoulder against it and then stomped his foot against it. It didn't budge, though. Unknown voice. You have 10 seconds to get behind the line or you will die. This is your last warning. Andy paused and thought about it. When it came to 5 seconds, he decided he didn't want to find out if they were bluffing or not and booked it down the hallway back to us. He was 5 feet away when the voice reached 1. He leaped forward, trying to get beyond the tape. Unknown voice, 0. Just as he said it, a shot rang out and Andy's head exploded in blood. He fell to the ground just short of the yellow line. His blood splattered against myself and Caroline as we stood in shock as to what had happened. We moved away from the hallway and went over to the beds. None of us spoke after that. We all just kept to ourselves. When dinner rolled around, Ricky made everyone sandwiches. We talked to each other for a bit by this point, getting to know each other. By the time 10 p.m. rolled around, everyone was pretty much asleep. I looked over to the only empty bed, thinking of what had happened to Andy. That's all I got from the first audio file. Quite frankly, I am terrified and have contacted the police about the situation. I hope that tomorrow I will get another email from Tony. Until then. 4th story. I played a horror ghost hunting game IRL. Let me begin by saying that I am an avid horror indulger. I like pretty much anything and everything scary, short of pure gore. My favorite movie has always been Paranormal Activity, the first one, not the crapstorm that followed, and my favorite author is Stephen King, and I spend a ridiculous amount of time playing horror computer games. It should then come as no surprise that I jumped at the occasion of being a tester for the new horror game pilot that came out last month. This was the first horror game ever created IRL, in real life, mimicking the new fad in computer games that I won't name for copyright reasons, where you normally travel to a haunted house, find the ghost, and exorcise it. God, I was so excited when I heard the news that such a game is happening. I put my name down last year, and finally was selected to participate in the beta testing. I had two options. I could either participate with a group of strangers, or I could bring my own friends, up to a maximum 6 players. Luckily for me, I have been in the horror scene for so long that I could muster up 5 more people who were as equally excited as I was. We spent a fortune getting to the location, as we were all out of state arrests. But c'est la vie, as the French say. We were all working adults with money to spend, and spend we did. I won't bore you with the mundane details of our arrival. Suffice it to say we all got on location timely. The plan was simple: get to the house, have a quick run-through guided by the game makers, and then go play. We were booked for 3 hours of play, which the game makers estimated would mean a good 2-3 rounds. Now, for those familiar with aforementioned video games, feel free to just skim this next introductory bit, just to spot differences between computer and IRL playstyles. For those of you who are completely clueless, I will try to explain the game in a way that won't make your head spin. The purpose of this game is simple, simpler than on PC. Find and identify the ghost type. No special quests, no extra tasks. There were 6 potential aggressive ghost types: Spirit, Demon, Jinn, Wraith, Oni and Mare, and Casper, the friendly ghost. There were also 4 types of equipment we were allowed to carry to be used to find evidence: EMF readers, thermometers, sound recorders, and cameras. Additionally, we were also given flashlights, lighters, and walkie-talkies. So, to recap the simple basics, use tools to find evidence and identify the ghost. The end. Upon arrival on location, we were presented with some forms to sign, waivers in case anything happened. It seemed sensible. The standard "we are not responsible if you fall down the stairs and break your leg, blah blah. But we can sue you if you set the house on fire." Afterwards, we were escorted to the back of a big white van, parked right outside the house, and which contained all the equipment, and each handed some material to read. Firstly, information on the equipment, type, and amount. 2x EMF reader counts as evidence only when the EMF meter indicates red, henceforth known as red EMF for evidence purposes. 2x thermometer only counts as evidence when the temperatures go below 0, freezing temperatures for evidence purposes. 2x sound recorder. Record yourself asking your question and give the ghost a few seconds to reply. Then you play it back to yourself and listen to see if the ghost said anything. SR for evidence purposes. 2x camera. Walk around with it turned on, not recording, and spot any sort of ghost activity. This normally looks like a foggy gray humanoid-like appearance, only seen through the lens of the camera. Ghost particle for evidence purposes. 6x flashlights. Self-explanatory. There are spares. 3x lighters. Can be used to light the candles scattered throughout the house. 6x walkie-talkies. Self-explanatory. There are spares. For a fully immersive experience, we strongly advise you to leave your mobile phones in the van at the front entrance. Next, very brief information about the ghosts. Spirit wants to be seen and heard, has a story to tell, can become aggressive in order to get others to listen to it. Evidence Ghost particles and SR. Demon, vile, hellspawn creature that only wants to hurt people. Evidence, red EMF and SR. Jinn, ghosts that have been tremendously hurt during their lives. Want to inflict the same pain to others. Evidence, red EMF and ghost particles. Wraith, creature that feeds on the weak-minded. Evidence, red EMF and freezing temperatures. Oni, evil creature that possesses exceptional strength. Can and will use items around the room to hurt others. Evidence, SR and freezing temperatures. Mare, malicious spirits that want to inflict emotional pain and fear. Evidence, ghost particles and freezing temperatures. Casper, the friendly ghost, just wants hugs. Evidence, all. Finally, a list of rules. 1. The round starts when everybody is in the house and you declare, "Start round." The doors will lock behind you, so be sure to bring all items inside first, including the spare flashlights and walkie-talkies. 2. The round ends when you have agreed upon the ghost type and you declare, "Ghost type is understood." If you do not agree on a ghost type, try to select by majority. Once you have declared the ghost type, the doors will unlock and you will be informed whether you were right or not. 3. Please vacate the house after each round for 15 minutes, not deducted from your time, to allow for the game makers to reset the house and prepare for the next round. 4. The ghost tends to haunt one room or hallway. That is to say, the evidence produced will appear there. The ghost's location does not change throughout a round, but will change from one round to another. 5. You can all stick together, but it is advised to break into smaller groups to speed the process. 6. If you have angered the ghost, it will haunt you. During this time, it can leave the room which it normally haunts and chase you. You are advised to hide. If it finds you and lays a hand on you, you will be considered dead and will be asked to leave the premises for the duration of the round. Go upstairs and in the room marked under construction. A ghost haunt will stop by itself after 90 seconds or immediately if a player has died. That's it. Have fun and enjoy being ghost hunters for the day. P.S. Please do not try to fight the ghost and or prank them. They are paid actors and will not actually harm you. Once we all got accustomed to the documentation, we were eager and ready to start. And there we were, the 6 of us just looking at the entrance door of the beautiful mansion stood in front of us. It was breathtaking, Victorian Gothic if I were to guess, 3 floors and a tower in the middle, all dark gray brick with a black roof. It was an impressive sight for sure. And there at dawn, under the purple sun, it was even a little spine-chilling. "All right, let's not be chicken," Andrew barked as he opened the door. Based on his intonation, one would expect that he'd slam it right open, but I could tell he was nervous when instead he pushed it open slowly and walked in. Benjamin and Mark followed right after, which was surprising to me, as Benjamin was always a scaredy cat online. But maybe he wanted to impress his boyfriend, even if Mark and he had been together for quite some years. Then went Jennifer, and that I had expected, as the girl usually had a pair bigger than all of us put together. Afterwards, Angela, Benjamin's sister, and myself. We were similar in the sense that we were both all bark and no bite. We entered into a long hallway. At the end of the hallway, there were the stairs to what I could only assume was the second floor, and to the left and right of us, closed doors. "All right, shall we start then?" Angela asked impatiently. "I think we should maybe take the game maker's advice into consideration and do a quick reconnaissance tour," Jen ever so sensibly proposed. The suggestion was accepted unanimously, and we proceeded with opening every single door on the bottom floor. We found a large storage, a guest bathroom, an impressively immense living room, complete with a fireplace, a piano, a beautiful satin 3-seater, Then on the other side of the hallway, a Gothic dining room with black chairs and a black table, above which, straight in center, a candelabra and a somewhat rustic kitchen. We then went upstairs, where the narrow hallway at the top of the stairs was met with yet another, slightly larger horizontal hallway. Similarly to downstairs, each side of the hallway held quite some closed doors. We discovered a couple of bedrooms and the under-construction room just opposite the stairs. On the side of the stairs, to its right, a kid's room and a big bathroom, a bit ridiculous in my opinion, with a big tub straight in the middle of it, surrounded by one of those room separators you see in TV shows about kings and queens. To its left, a large unfurnished room, some moving boxes scattered around. We assumed the game makers did not have the funds to finish it, so they left it to look like the family who'd moved in there was just not done unpacking. Not uninspired. "All right, I guess now we can start," Andrew noted after we'd all gone downstairs and into the van to grab all our equipment. "Right. Start round," I declared. "No need to yell, players. We have ears everywhere." We confirmed the start of the round. "As this is your first round, take your time. We grant you a grace period of 15 minutes before the ghost would even appear." We heard the game makers reply, "We will announce when the time is up." We all stood in the hallway, poking at the equipment and trying to figure out how it all worked. Apart from the brief instructions in van, we didn't have much to go on, and I myself had never seen an EMF reader in real life before. Once we got the hang of which buttons to press, how to turn stuff on, and how to interpret the information on the equipment, Mark broke the silence. "We split up then? 3 upstairs, 3 downstairs? That makes the most sense, seeing as we have 2 of each evidence equipment," Jennifer agreed. "Then us 3, upstairs," she gestured at Benjamin. Herself and me, the 3 of us standing on one side of the hallway. "And you 3, down here? And then we can mix up each round?" On our team side, I grabbed the EMF, Ben grabbed the camera, and Jen picked up the thermometer, and each of us took a walkie-talkie and a flashlight. I also grabbed a lighter and proceeded to light all the candles that I could see along the way. Unlike the online game, this house had no actual lights, or light generators, or anything we could use to see but candles and our flashlights. "I doubt we'll use this before we figure out the room," she declared, grabbing the sound recorder and shoving it down her back pocket. As agreed, we headed up the stairs and began using our tools. We started on the right with the big bathroom and the kids' room, and across the hall in the first bedroom. We weren't quite sure what we were looking for, but we assumed it wouldn't be all that different from the online games we'd played, so we had our eyes out for lower temperatures and slight EMF interference. 15 minutes are up, we heard the game makers announce, startling us. "Right, so now we're fair game," Benjamin confirmed. I could sense some of the scaredy cat behavior behind his somewhat soft, whispered voice. "Better identify hiding places then," I said, more thinking out loud. As I would pass certain locations, like big wardrobes or beds with enough space underneath to hide, I'd make a mental note. Not long after the 15-minute announcement, the guys from the other team walkie-talkied us. "I think we got the bastard," Angela announced. "Got some cold air around this kitchen." "On our way," I responded, as we made our way back downstairs. The kitchen was just at the bottom of the stairs, on the left. I am not sure whether it was because of the excitement of potentially facing the ghost soon, or because it truly was so, but I felt the room was much colder than the rest of the house. The thermometers were showing around 40 FHR, but that could not be. They were definitely controlled by the game makers somehow, but it did not feel like mid-60s anymore, either. Despite all 6 of us being crammed into the kitchen, there was an eerie quietness surrounding us. We were all listening, scared we'd miss something if we'd talk. The kitchen was rustic and not very fancy, mostly dark with fake black marble countertops. As I was taking in everything around me, I noticed the slightest flicker reflecting in the black washstand right next to me. This, in turn, directed my gaze to the opposing wall, where a candle just appeared to have been blown out. "Did you see that?" I whispered. But I did not have a chance to get a reply as more candles were being put out by an invisible force. We all held our breaths, almost in unison, but nothing else seemed to happen. After what seemed like a very long time, finally, Andrew spoke. "So, what do we have so far?" he asked. "Well, no light," Mark replied facetiously. "I meant in terms of evidence," he countered, not being amused. The atmosphere was tense, unlike in the online game. We all felt a little off, a little unhinged. "We don't have any evidence as far as I can tell," Jen replied, as she moved across the room to relight the candles. I decided to help and pulled my own lighter out. I flicked it to ignite the spark, and just as I moved it toward the candle, a light breeze blew it out again. This time I felt the cold wind on my fingers, and it made me shriek. Then, remembering I was playing a horror game, I started laughing. That seemed to lighten the mood all around, as everybody joined in. Unfortunately, that didn't last long, as an apparition seemed to come from the wall and stop an inch away from my face, yelling right before it disappeared again, making me drop my own flashlight and leaving me in complete darkness for a second. Grateful to my bladder for not failing me, I recollected and picked up my flashlight. The roar of laughter was even louder this time. "Me, that was good," Angela commented. "Yeah, 'cause you're seeing it from over there," Jen said from next to me. She was also laughing, but clearly the two of us were slightly more distraught. "I need a moment," I claimed, getting out of the kitchen and walking towards the exit. As I was trying to get out, I realized that we needed to end the round first, and I didn't want to ruin anyone's game, but I was feeling a little suffocated. You see, there are two types of reactions to danger, flight or fight. I was so far on the flight side that all I wanted in that very moment was to break a window and get out. Luckily, the moment passed quickly and I managed to compose myself. I was loving it and hating it at the same time, but I wanted to finish it, for myself but also for the others. "You good?" Andrew asked from the kitchen door. I could barely see him from his flashlight at times. Then I realized his flashlight was flickering. In the online game, that meant the ghost was haunting. "Hide!" I yelled as I bolted towards the storage room next to the entrance. I wasn't sure if they realized it too or not, but I threw myself behind a stack of big shelves and started counting down from 90. I hadn't made it past 30 when I could hear the game makers announce, "Please make your way to the under construction room now," and I realized someone died. Ironically, this made me feel better. It made it all seem like a game, the announcement, the fake death. It removed some of the tightness I was feeling in my chest, and I returned to the kitchen. "So Mark bit the dust," Andrew informed me as I entered. We couldn't really get out of the kitchen, as the ghost bolted out of that cabinet over there, and it just went for the first person in its way. "But look, we have 28 degrees now," Angela exclaimed. "So, we have freezing temps, and we know it's not the friendly ghost, as it definitely did not hug Mark," she added, giggling. "So that means it could be a wraith, Oni, or mare," Benjamin interjected, checking his info package. Most of us left ours in the van. I was grateful that Benjamin was generally an overly prepared know-it-all right now. "I don't get any significant EMF," I added, looking down at it. Although just as I said that, my EMF went absolutely crazy. It wasn't a steady red. It was all over the place, from red to 0 back to red. "Wait, does this count?" I asked, fighting the urge to throw the EMF across the room. I think it does, Jin confirmed. That'd be a wraith then, Benjamin said. Great. Shall we give the game makers our answer then, and go again? I asked, excited by the prospect of some fresh air. Aye. Ghost type is wraith, Andrew confirmed. You are correct, ghost hunters, came the voice of the game makers. Please grab all your equipment and vacate the house, which should now be unlocked. Return in 15 minutes. We started grabbing all our things as Mark joined us from upstairs, and we all left, sharing impressions and feelings. The second round went a little bit better in the sense that the ghost was in the living room, and it was Casper. So we all gave him a big hug and vacated again for 15 minutes. All in all, we had about an hour and 20 minutes left, enough for a game, maybe even two. Start game, Andrew said. You three down, us three up, he said, separating us into two teams. It was Jin, him and me upstairs, and the other three on the ground floor. This was now our third round, and we had become comfortable with the house and the equipment, so the initial setup was fast and smooth. While the first two rounds had been pretty straightforward when it came to evidence, we quickly learned that it was not the case now. I think I have EMF 5 here, Angela walkie-talkied us from downstairs. All right, we're on our way down, I replied while Andrew and myself headed for the stairs. Jen was in the farthest room of the house, so she was lagging behind. I think it's in the kitchen again, Angela said, meeting us at the bottom of the stairs. Hang on, guys, came Jen's voice through the walkie-talkie. I'm getting freezing temps in this empty bedroom. I think at least. Andrew took out his own EMF, and sure enough, it was a high response, but it was not a clear 5. I think the evidence is not as straightforward anymore, he concluded. Best make sure we get it right. All right, from the top then, I said, going back upstairs. Jen's in the empty room on the left, so you check the bathroom and bedroom on the right, and I'll go across from you in the first bedroom, okay? Andrew said to me as soon as we had reached the second floor again. That way we cover most ground. Then we regroup and switch tools. I nodded and followed instructions. I was manning a camera with infrared, looking for ghost particles, so my flashlight was a mere hindrance. As I entered the bathroom, something seemed off, however. The shower atop the bathtub, the one awkwardly placed in the middle of the room and partly concealed by a room divider, seemed to be running. Guys, I think it's here. I ran out of the room and yelled down the hall, forgetting about the walkie-talkie in my excitement. I went back into the bathroom, ignoring all my survivor's instincts, camera held towards the bathtub. I couldn't quite make out what was happening through the little camera screen, so I decided to put it down and fumbled for my flashlight. As I turned it on, I heard a loud splash coming from the bathtub. What the? I said to myself, and I walked carefully a little closer. Then I saw it, a leg. A fully dressed, wet leg was coming out of the water. To my initial relief, and then immediate panic, the leg was attached to a man. The dude, absolutely huge in appearance, was rising from the tub, completely soaked. I froze, felt like I couldn't move a muscle. He was immense, wore what looked like black leather pants and a simple white t-shirt, which, wet, clung to his skin. He had long, messy black hair. Who are you? I asked, but nobody replied. The man, now completely upright, bent over and grabbed something from behind the room divider. A chainsaw. He was now completely turned to me, holding the chainsaw with both hands, pulling out the starter rope. The chainsaw started revving, and the sound startled me out of my mental block. Shit, I thought to myself. This felt wrong. This was not part of the game. That did not look like a prop. A million thoughts ran through my head at the same time, all of them directing me towards the nearest exit, and not in a calm and orderly fashion. Instinctively, I threw my camera at him, startling him. and started to run towards the door. "Guys, run! Get out!" I yelled, "Help!" But just as I started screaming, music started blasting through the speakers, muffling my voice. Nobody could hear me. The doors were probably still locked. I had to warn everyone and get out. I ran into Andrew right in the hallway and grabbed his hand. He looked startled. "Don't think this is part of the game. Dude has a chainsaw in there," I said, dragging him towards the stairs. "You serious?" he asked incredulously. "It's locked." "Fuck!" I yelled, realizing the door at the top of the stairs wouldn't budge. "Yeah, I'm serious," I confirmed, although I didn't need to. As Andrew flashed his light behind us, we caught a glimpse of him walking slowly out of the bathroom, grinning. Sick fuck. He was enjoying this. "Guys!" I yelled as I ran into the unfurnished bedroom. But everybody was mesmerized by the music and the gimmicks, thinking it's part of the game. "Guys, we gotta get out," I tried again, as I pushed a window open. Nobody was paying attention to me except for Andrew. They were into all their tools, which seemed to have gone crazy. I climbed out the window and Andrew followed me. I looked down. It was a long way, but it looked like there was a trash can right below, filled with leaves and grass. I hoped to God it would break my fall. "Guys!" I tried again, as the guy was now standing in the door frame. Jen looked at me, not completely understanding what I was doing halfway out the window. By the time realization hit her, the guy's chainsaw was halfway through Benjamin. I didn't stick around. I couldn't. I jumped. Andrew followed. We both made it out okay, but no one else managed to follow. We made a run for our phones, which were in van outside. 911, what is your emergency? I tried my best to explain what was happening, and then Andrew and I ran and hid behind some trees in the forest. After what seemed like an eternity, the guy came out of the house through the front door, which was no longer locked. He looked around a couple of times, probably for us, but as he couldn't spot us, he went to the van, closed the tailgate doors, got in, and drove off. The police came about 10 minutes later, followed by an ambulance. We ran to them and told them in more detail what had happened. They went inside and confirmed that everybody was dead, including the game makers behind the under-construction room. Andrew and I were asked to ride in the ambulance, because even though there was nothing physically wrong with us, they decided we needed to be monitored closely after such events. We didn't comment. There was no trace of the man in his van. Nobody knows if he was part of the crew or some other maniac. It didn't matter. "Ghost type is massive murderer," Andrew said from his bed in the ambulance before collapsing onto it. I laughed a sorrowful laugh and collapsed myself. If only I'd been more insistent in that bedroom. If only I didn't find this stupid game in the first place. Grief overwhelmed me then, and guilt overwhelms me to this day. Fifth story. I was a hoax paranormal investigator, right up until I met the family that showed me hell itself. I know that immoral doesn't quite cover it. It isn't as though I awoke one morning and decided that was the Thursday I was going to roll out of bed and become a piece of shit. I didn't pull on last year's trainers and make a pact with myself that my bank balance would triple because I was going to become a ghost hunting scam artist, greasing my endless lies with snake oil. But it doesn't matter. Not really. Karma came for me in a big way, and it was deserved. We gained a bit of a niche following online. Nothing to write home about, but we made our money from donations and, of course, the cold hard cash from the people we sucked the life out of. I won't bore with fine details, but we ghost busted 19 homes before we reached the Whistlebees. With each home, we bought more equipment to really add credence to the whole Wraith Wrangler thing. We turned creaky floorboards into demons, water tank leaks into internet views. It was fun, until it wasn't. I'd never met a family quite like them. The others, they were young couples afraid of whistling wind. Old singles desperate for validation that their home wasn't heavy with the weight of vengeful spirits. It was easy, muscle memory. But the Whistlebees, God, they were terrified. Young parents and 2 children with their family dog, cowering in the corner when we set up for our bullshit interview. The daughter was so pale she seemed to sink into the walls behind her, face gaunt and eyes haunted. It was her we latched onto as we probed, stifling excited smirks with our palms. "He never leaves," she whispered, staring through us as if we weren't really there. If her eyes glimmered once, they certainly didn't now, lost and soulless as she gazed into the abyss. It was Adam who managed to coax the words from her lips, voice soft as he gently probed. "Who is he? We have plenty of equipment here to find him in whatever corner he's hiding. We just need to know as much as you can tell us." A wry smile made its way onto her lips as she finally looked at Adam, voice low and deliberate. "You don't need to find him. You'll know where he is, I promise. He walks on the ceiling and crawls down the walls. He'll find you." The young girl's mum spoke suddenly, eyes full of tears. "She didn't use to speak this way," she breathed, gaze darting around the room. "She's so tired. So tired. She doesn't sleep anymore. It doesn't let her." Jonah stood up then, grinning as he clutched his camera for dear life. "Ma'am, don't you worry for a second. You're in the right hands. We'll find out what your visitor wants, and we'll cast him right out of here. You have my word." His word meant nothing, but they didn't need to know that. The fear in their aura was palpable. It was as if they had their own pulsing circle of gravity, sucking the life from the room. Their dread did something foreign to me. It made me nervous. In all the nighttime giggling and masquerading in people's homes, I'd never been scared. To do this job was to know that ghosts were as real as fairies in whimsical tales. It was to laugh at the notion. But during that interview, I wasn't laughing. The girl's eyes were black holes, and they looked like they'd sucked her soul out long ago. So, with the image of those eyes burned into my retinas, we did what we did best. 11 p.m. rolled around, and with the family booked into a hotel, it was showtime. "Show yourself, demon." Jonah lunged through the front door as nighttime blanketed the house in darkness, hauling our masses of equipment through. We didn't need any of it, obviously, but it made people feel as though we were legitimately expelling ghosts from their homes with the flick of a battered crucifix. Adam rolled his eyes, glancing down at the EMF reader in his hand.
"Bro, come onorevole."
"Did you see how scared that girl was? I feel a little bad." "Shit, she was creepy." Jonah chomped on his gum, leaving muddy boot stains as he clambered up on the sofa to stick his camera to the wall. He walks on the ceiling. Dude must have the mother of all headaches. I stayed quiet, chewing my lip as I set up our audio equipment and eyed the tired-looking lump of plastic. The older it looks, the more authentic it appears, Jonah had assured me, and sure, I supposed it did look like it belonged in a 1998 horror game, but it was pretty shit. Not that we'd ever picked up anything on it before. There was the great scare of House 12 when the fridge appeared to hum a lilting tune, but it was just super broken. Right? Jonah jumped downwards, nearly knocking over the coffee table. Plan is Megan Donovan is leaving the house party you guys didn't want to go to at like 2 a.m. I say we wrap up here by 1 a.m., swing by the party, and I'll be her shoulder to cry on because her douchebag boyfriend was a dick again all night. Adam scowled as Jonah cackled, but I stayed mute, casting my eyes around the room. I couldn't deny this place felt different, somehow. Even with all the lights dancing across the house, there sat an empty, tepid coldness that seemed to seep through the walls. There was no warmth here, no safety. Loving family photos littered the room, but somehow it felt barren, wrong. I'm down to do this quickly at least, Adam muttered, eyes darting around nervously. You guys feel that? Place feels haunted. I finished for him, rolling my eyes at Jonah's guffaws. All right, if you're both gonna be pussies, I'll get started. He stared ominously into our main camera placed across the room, red light blinking towards the sofa we were sitting on. It's time, everyone. As always, first, we'll try to contact the ghost and see if we pick up anything on the microphone or the EMF. Clearing his throat, Adam stole a glance at me. Okay. We're here in your domain, ghost. He tried to project, but I heard the slight crack in his voice. We're here to find out what you want, why you haunt this family. We're here to set you free. I counted down from 6, bulging my eyes as I shrieked, throwing myself backwards. No way, I bellowed, pointing off camera. There's no way. And we did the usual scramble, all of us claiming we saw a photo frame go flying, switching to shaky hand cam footage as Jonah retrieved it from the floor we laid it on earlier. It was rehearsed, but something just felt different. It's hard to describe, but I couldn't shake the feeling a pair of eyes were locked onto me, a horrid gaze burning into my back. The feeling amplified as we pulled out the trusty Ouija board only moments later, laying it on the table and pushing it into frame. I scratched at my arms nervously, trying not to stare at the shadows that seemed to be consuming the room. All right, Jonah muttered, placing his finger on the planchette. I ask its name. We give it something creepy like Maurice. I'll move it. You guys just stay still. Feel free to run the show on this one. I offered, goosebumps erupting over my skin. Had it gotten colder in here? Adam certainly thought so as he hugged his hoodie tighter, shaking something off as he placed his finger on the planchette with us. The dread was otherworldly, beginning to creep across my skin and begging me to stop. Spirit, Jonah demanded, dramatically eyeing each corner of the room. Make yourself known to us. Show us. Communicate with us. I want to ask what name gives you your power. What is your name, ghost? He waited a fairly believable amount of time before the planchette slowly began to move towards him, but I knew my heart wasn't in my lackluster reaction. Jonah would yell at me later, claiming I ruined the entire Ouija shot, but I swore I could see something in my peripheral, just out of view, staring at me. I didn't turn my head, didn't dare. Instead, I gritted my teeth and focused on the board, letting my jaw drop dramatically. Mauri. And just like that, the planchette halted. Painfully, almost. Jonah scowled, head snapping to us. Really? Dude, I was nearly finished, Dash. You stopped, I argued, wondering if it was a blanket on the bookshelf or a crumpled up man staring dead-eyed at me, as I was beginning to suspect it was. Just do it again, Adam grumbled, and it wasn't usually like this. We didn't fight, we didn't bite. The house felt as though it was draining the life from us, the joy. I felt physically tired, as though even being here was soul-sucking. But, as I told myself, ghosts were not real. We were not real. We were opportunistic bastards, and we were leaving at 1 a.m. The planchette moved to M with ease again, and we forced our shock, but with less enthusiasm this time. It seemed even Jonah was struggling now, eyebrows knitted together tensely. Mauric. And it stopped again, but this time it jerked to the left, causing a gasp to leave Adam's lips. Jonah, what is your problem? Jonah cried, looking between us as though we were crazy. Ever since we got in here, you've been acting like a couple of little girls. I swear to God, if Megan Dash. But his words died on his lips, because, as we all scowled at one another, the planchette yanked our waiting fingers in the opposite direction, landing on a letter. B. Adam, for Christ dash. E. The planchette scraped horribly against the Ouija board and I couldn't tear my eyes away, sitting between the chaos of my friends arguing as each blamed the other, neither paying enough attention to the board. I swallowed, trying to watch for a twitch of the muscles in their fingers, some indication of which one was fucking with us. E. But there was none. Their fingers were light, barely grazing the object jerking clumsily around the board. Adam met my eyes, trepidation lining his features. Listen, I just want to get this shit done and get out of here. If this is you dash. L. It isn't, I returned, voice lost in the sound of Jonah growling and wrenching up the planchette, launching it across the room till it hit the wall with a sickening crack. I could only stare in shock at my furious, panting friend, but Adam leapt upwards, throwing his arms out in question. You can't be serious. Jonah, for fuck's sake, what is wrong with you? And they argued, yelled, threw their arms around, ignored the room. But I couldn't ignore the room. I hadn't been able to ignore it from the second we'd stepped in here, the atmosphere wrapping around my throat from the very first second we dared. And they weren't seeing it, but I was. The blanket in the corner of the room, hanging limply from the figure underneath it. Tall, impossibly tall, shrouded in shadow and with the fabric sagging off it horribly. Shut up, I whispered to the boys next to me, but they didn't stop. They didn't stop as the blanket began to drag closer towards us, the sound of toenails scraping on the floor echoing louder than even my friends. I could see the silhouette underneath it, the darkness that followed, the cold. But they didn't notice, not until a screech sounded, sending our eyes all in the direction of the bleeping monstrosity. Adam cried, shaking his head at the EMF detector which was flashing a bloody red color and wailing to attention. I was only distracted momentarily from the carnage, turning around in time to feel a horrid whoosh of air as the blanket fell into a crumpled heap a mere inch from my nose, dropping to my feet. The air was sucked from my lungs as I tumbled backwards, collapsing on the sofa and gasping instead of forming words. Adam looked upon me with concern, but Jonah was done. Nah, he growled, wincing at the wail of the EMF machine. Listen, I'm not doing this all over again. Come here. Let's do something with this godforsaken thing. Grab it, wave it around, just get up. My eyes were still darting around the room and only pulled from their trance as a buzzing fly landed on my hand, narrowly avoiding death with the flick of my shaking finger. It woke me up, my voice sounding more strained than I would have liked. Are you hearing that? It's detecting something, Jonah. I swear to God I saw dash. Faulty microwave, shitty electrics, I don't know. His voice raised threateningly. Seriously, stop. Let's leave the room and run in. We'll act shocked about the EMF. We'll walk around a bit, and then we're going. I'm sick of you both. I should have argued. Obviously, I should have argued. But I can't describe the way I felt in that moment. It was as though my fear gave way to denial so quickly that I was already calling myself crazy, reaching desperately for the idea that no, I was seeing things, feeling things, as though I needed to prove to myself that I was crazy, and the horrors my mind was conjuring simply couldn't exist. So I stayed. I stayed as the three of us trudged out of the living room, as we all pulled our clothes tighter and ignored the ice seeping into our skin. I ignored Adam squeezing my shoulder, a sentiment he'd never bothered with before. I ignored my thudding heart as we clutched our cameras, bursting into the living room in our most epic movie yet, ready to contort our faces in horror. But we didn't have to fake it. In the corner was our screaming EMF reader, blinking red as it had been for the last 5 minutes. But the problem was the endless claws wrapped around it, attached to a figure so tall its head brushed the ceiling and black eyes glared upon us. It swayed in the shadows, but I could see its arms, gaunt and as long as its legs, neck cracking awfully as it turned to look at us in an instant. A sick, dripping sounded just loud enough for us to hear, and to this day, I imagine it as thick, crimson blood falling from its fingers onto its dead, curled toes. "Holy shit," Adam whispered. So I knew, in fact, I hadn't lost my mind. We ran, of course, scared idiots launching themselves backwards and tripping over everything, legs jelly as we bolted for the front door. I cursed myself for not leaving more quickly, begged for a time machine to have me believe my eyes the first time. We didn't make it. There in the hallway was our 1998 horror movie audio device, except now it was crackling and a rasp sounded from it, too deep and gravelly to be human. Layers of voices sounded at once, so distorted I could barely make them out. "I smell your blood," it rasped, the voice touching me so closely I could practically feel it inside of me. "I'll suck it out of your veins and wear your skin." And then, before there was time to react, every light bulb in the house smashed at once. I know, because I heard the shards hit the floor in every room, cried out as pure darkness filled the space, leaving me with no idea where my friends were and if they even existed anymore. "The door won't open," Adam screeched from my right, audibly jamming the handle. "It won't open." "Where's the crucifix?" Jonah begged, and I could hear the tears in his voice. "Adam, where?" But now it was only footsteps we heard, not slow ones. Thudding, loud footsteps, gaining pace and getting louder and louder, till it sounded like something was running at us. But the sound didn't come from the floor. With the most gut-wrenching feeling of horror, I realized it was coming from the ceiling. "Oh my God!" Adam's voice was below me somewhere, because he'd fallen down into a heap of fear. "What is that? What is that?" It was deafening. All of it. The wailing EMF detector, the rasp of crackling audio threatening to break all our bones at once, the footsteps slamming to a stop directly above my head, all leading to the moment I looked up, a silent tear disappearing in a slow trickle down my cheek. Its body was contorted horribly as it glowered down from the ceiling, neck cracked at an unnatural angle with bones jutting out everywhere, dead, black holes for eyes bored into mine, hell radiating from them in such a way that I was knocked to the floor by the sheer force of it. Rows of razor teeth were pulled back into a horrific grin, stretching much in the way its wings did as they grazed the ceiling, reams of liquid trickling from them onto our heads. Hell, staring from above me. My memory is hazy, and part of me thinks my brain tried to erase the trauma to give myself half a chance to go on with my life. I remember Jonah being lifted into the air with such a guttural wail that I've never heard a sound like it since. Remember the sound of his bones crackling as we ran, making straight for the living room. We threw furniture at the window and ignored the thud of Jonah's lifeless body being hurled at us, hitting the wall with a sick crack. I know we got out. I felt its eyes burning from behind me as our skin snagged on glass, as we sprinted into the hammering rain, screaming for any help we could find. When the paramedics came, most of Jonah's leg had already been eaten, the remains nowhere to be found. He woke up 6 days later, screaming bloody murder. Screams he kept up till he was sedated, only reducing to a whimpering wail the third time they woke him up. The bottom floor of the house was destroyed, along with everything in it. Our equipment crushed. All evidence of our horrors erased other than the haunted look in Adams's eyes and the nightmares that still wake me at 3 a.m. Wild animals tore the leg from an unconscious Jonah, the local police said. We were just idiots holding a seance in a house, leaving the back door open to all manner of wild animals as we partied ourselves silly. At first, they thought we trashed the house, but the Whistlebees assured the police that no, it simply wasn't the case. This had happened before, they told them. We were just caught in the crossfire. They gave their statement that night, protested our innocence, then packed their bags. They never left. Their little girl went missing that night, right before they could flee. Her suitcase sat in her room, untouched, and that house became a sad legend on those streets, spoken about in hushed tones. I left town, but something inside it never left me. We don't speak of it, the three of us. We left, and when we meet, that night exists as the elephant in the room, Jonah's scarred stump, reminding us that we didn't imagine the entire thing as a collective fever dream. So I left, lived my life, started going to church, took up cricket, and when I hear the sound of thudding footsteps hammering along the ceiling of my hallway in the dead of night, I pull the covers over my head and pray to every god that may or may not exist that I'll live another day. It takes such a long time to pick up all 104 crucifixes off the floor the next morning, but for the life of me, I'll never stop doing it.